This is already something that has passed us to the point where we're not the country we should be or we used to be. Now, you voted for Trump. Tell me why this is okay.
In this fiery episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, tensions ran high as Bill Maher faced off with Fox News contributor and Trump supporter Mary Catherine Ham. The hot topic? Free and fair elections, and how each political party deals with the results. Maher wasn't in the mood for deflections or both sides' arguments. Ham, a familiar guest known for her attempt at offering a balanced view, tried to equate the behavior of both Democrats and Republicans, but Maher cut through that quickly. While Ham acknowledged that Trump's actions after the 2020 election were more extreme, she still tried to soften the impact by shifting the blame to both parties. Maher wasn't having it. He firmly stated that while Democrats may not be perfect, they typically accept election results, even when they lose. On the other hand, Trump's refusal to concede and the turmoil that followed were, in Maher's view, a far more serious threat to democracy.
Already something that has passed us to the point where we're not the country we should be or we used to be. Now, you voted for Trump. Tell me why this is okay with you.
Well, genuine thank you to Biden and Harris for doing what they should do, right?
That he didn't do.
Yeah, and
Trump.
yes, and Biden is, by the way, I'm not sure he knows he's in the room with Hitler, but he gets half credit for doing this peacefully.
Let's be clear. Mary Catherine Ham isn't one of the loudest voices defending Trump on Fox News. She's not yelling about election fraud or making wild claims, but when it comes to the 2020 election and the peaceful transfer of power, her commentary still ends up softening the reality of what happened. Yes, she gives Biden and Harris a bit of credit for showing up and participating in the transition process, but the way she frames it makes it sound like that was some bonus act of civility. In truth, that's not above and beyond. It's the bare minimum. Ensuring a peaceful transfer of power is a core part of any functioning democracy, and it should be expected of everyone in office, regardless of party. Yet, instead of directly addressing Trump's refusal to accept the results, Ham seems to gloss over it. Trump didn't just skip a few traditions, he actively tried to reverse the outcome. That's not something to brush aside, and it certainly isn't something that should be met with silence. When Bill Maher calls this out, Ham responds with a sarcastic remark, something about Biden getting half credit and not realizing he was in a room with Hitler. That may sound like just a joke, but it's a jab and a serious accusation. One that's been echoed by some of Trump's own former officials. People like General Mark Milley, John Kelly, and James Mattis have all warned about authoritarian tendencies. These aren't just pundits, they were in the room. They witnessed the behavior firsthand. If Ham disagrees with those comparisons, that's her right. But dismissing it entirely as partisan spin just doesn't hold up, especially when the stakes are this high.
Democracy, by listening to the voters about what they cared about most. And I think one of the issues with voters was that making January 6th, 9/11, making that day into everything, did not win that fight. It didn't win the fight about what they cared about most. There were other things in their personal lives.
That's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, you know that if Trump had lost this election, right now, we would be talking about the votes that are still coming in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and he'd be in the courts, and we would just be all in a tizzy. One side accepts election losses and one side doesn't.
This part really highlights one of the most revealing contradictions in how many Trump supporters, including Mary Catherine Ham, argue their points. You probably heard the line before. We're not a democracy, we're a republic. It's the standard response whenever someone mentions the popular vote, used to dismiss the idea that majority rule is important. But here's where it gets interesting. When Trump comes even close to winning the popular vote or secures a strong showing, the narrative flips completely. Suddenly, it's all about how he has a mandate from the people, and cheers erupt about the voice of the majority. The popular vote magically matters again. Let's talk facts. Trump has never actually won the majority of the popular vote. Not in 2016, not in 2020. When you factor in third-party candidates and write-ins, his share gets even smaller. So the idea that he had a sweeping win or overwhelming support doesn't match the math. What's even more telling is how that energy disappears when Democrats win both the popular vote and the Electoral College, often with wider margins than Trump ever achieved. At that point, it's right back to we're a republic and the rules seem to change overnight. This pattern reveals something bigger. It's not really about the process, it's about the outcome. The standards shift depending on who's winning. Supporters lean into whatever talking point favors them and downplay what doesn't. Whether it's elections or debates, it's often about operating under two different sets of rules. one for their side and another for everyone else.
Well, we won the election, so that's it.
Well, wait, hold on. Currently, Bob Casey, Democratic senator in Pennsylvania, is doing exactly what you're saying, where he's looking for all these votes and trying to, and the Bucks County commissioners are saying, we need fake ones. We need to get all the ones that are unregistered.
No, they're just counting them.
No, that's not actually true.
They're just counting them.
Not actually true. And if you dismiss that and you don't recognize the mote in your own eye, then that is a problem.
So you're saying Bob Casey, in this, that's equivalent to Trump in 2020?
No, I don't say they're equivalent. I say that you have to recognize that these things happen. For instance, in 2006.
Even though Mary Catherine Ham isn't one of the far-right voices in the media, she still tends to deflect from serious accountability in subtle but noticeable ways. A perfect example is when she tried to draw a comparison between Trump prematurely declaring victory in 2020 and Pennsylvania Democrat Josh Shapiro's call to count every vote. Let's be honest, those are not remotely the same. Shapiro was advocating for the basic process of counting all legal votes, which is how democracy works. Trump, meanwhile, was claiming victory before the counting was even complete, an effort that directly undermined the process. Comparing the two just blurs the truth and creates confusion. Then there's the moment she used a biblical analogy, the one about removing the speck from your own eye before pointing out the log in someone else's. Ironically, while using that verse to criticize Democrats, she ends up doing exactly what it warns against. Instead of addressing the serious and well-documented issues within her own party, particularly the actions of Trump and Republican leadership, she shifts the focus to small criticisms of Democrats. It's a classic case of deflection. Now, say what you will about Bill Maher and his often controversial takes, but in this moment he actually gets it right. He calls out the false equivalencies and redirects attention to where it belongs: the Republican Party's failure to hold Trump accountable and the dangerous precedent set after the 2020 election. What Maher does here is important. He stands firm against efforts to minimize real threats to democratic norms. When we're talking about election integrity, peaceful transfers of power, and trust in the system, there's no room for excuses. Accountability shouldn't depend on political party, it should be a universal standard. And for all his flaws, Maher doesn't back away from demanding that standard be met.